The British 7th Armoured Division's 22nd Armoured Brigade believed their experience and superior numbers would secure Villers-Bocage. They were proven wrong. On June 13, 1944, within a matter of minutes, more than a dozen of their tanks and vehicles were destroyed by a single adversary. Initial Allied reports assumed victory was inevitable after Normandy. The numbers told a different story as their advance ground to a halt under unexpected firepower. SS-Obersturmführer Michael Wittmann, commanding a Tiger I tank from the 101st SS Heavy Panzer Battalion, executed an ambush at point 213. In under 15 minutes, Wittmann's 57-ton Panzerkampfwagen V Tiger AUSF-E knocked out up to 14 British Cromwell tanks, 15 personnel carriers, and 2 anti-tank guns. The Tiger I's 88mm KWK-36L, 56 gun and 100mm frontal armor proved decisive against lighter Allied vehicles. British tankers found their formations shattered before they could react or regroup. An unforeseen factor turned the Allied confidence into chaos. A lone Tiger tank operating outside standard orders exploited surprise, speed, and the narrow confines of the Bocage. This single action stalled the Allied offensive, forcing a humiliating withdrawal. The following minutes in Villers-Bocage would redefine tactical expectations and leave the town scarred by armor and fire. This is precisely how the advance faltered. June 13, 1944, 0800 hours. Brigadier William Hind led the 22nd Armored Brigade into Villers-Bocage, a small French town approximately 14 kilometers southwest of Caen. Brigadier Hind was tasked with cutting off the German 352nd Infantry Division by seizing point 213 along Route N175. His force included the 1st Battalion, Royal Tank Regiment, fielding Cromwell tanks with 75mm guns and 64mm maximum armor, and infantry transported in half-track carriers. On the Axis side, SS-Obersturmführer Michael Wittmann commanded the 2nd Company, 101st SS Heavy Panzer Battalion, equipped with Tiger I tanks and supported by the Panzer Lehr Division. These units were strategically placed in defensive positions near Villers-Bocage and on the slopes northwest of the town. The Tiger's 88mm guns had a maximum effective range of 2,000 meters, with sloped armor designed to resist the Cromwell's 75mm rounds. Allied headquarters forecast rapid progress due to previous rapid advances from Gold Beach and favorable reports of weakened German forces, based on reconnaissance on June 11, 1944, and earlier tank engagements. The 22nd Brigade expected minimal anti-tank resistance, believing German armor to be limited in number and disorganized following the landings. However, German reinforcements including Tigers had arrived during the previous night. The hedgerows, or bocage, formed earth banks up to 1.5 meters high, creating narrow, winding lanes and severely limiting visibility. Allied reconnaissance failed to detect the presence of the 101st SS Heavy Panzer Battalion in the area, a critical oversight. The thick morning mist reduced visibility to less than 300 meters, muffling engine noise and masking movement. What happened in the next 15 minutes would decide control of Villers-Bocage and influence the subsequent Allied push towards Caen. At 0835 hours, a column of Cromwell tanks from the 4th County of London Yeomanry, under Major Christopher Dunlop, began advancing east along Route N175 toward point 213. Each tank was crewed by 5 men and armed with 75mm QF guns and Besa 7.92mm machine guns, with each vehicle weighing approximately 28 tons. The road was hemmed in by bocage hedgerows about 1.5 meters high, restricting maneuver options. From the German position, SS-Obersturmführer Michael Wittmann had positioned his Tiger I, with 100mm frontal armor and an 88mm KWK-36L, 56 cannon, behind farm buildings just west of point 213. The Tiger's gun was capable of penetrating 110mm at ranges up to 1,500 meters, easily outmatching the Cromwell's protection. By 0840 hours, Wittmann opened fire. Within minutes, 5 Cromwells, 2 Sherman Fireflies, and several half-tracks were destroyed in rapid sequence. Meanwhile, elsewhere on the column, Lieutenant Jack Ayres of the Royal Armoured Corps reported a mechanical failure in one of the Cromwell's gearboxes, rendering it immobile, a vulnerability quickly exploited by German gunners. This resulted in a pile-up that blocked further vehicles from withdrawing. At 0845 hours, Captain Richard Carr of the Royal Armoured Corps intercepted a message indicating that enemy armor had penetrated the town's western edge. This prompted calls for air support and artillery, which would be delayed by communications disruptions caused by the terrain. German radio operator Unteroffizier Hans Becker at point 213 reported a burning convoy visible beyond the hedgerows and relayed estimates of at least 12 enemy vehicles destroyed. He was unaware of the British Armoured Reserve being mobilized east of Villers-Bocage. Weather remained overcast with mist, 15 degrees Celsius temperature, and visibility down to 250 meters, further complicating Allied countermeasures. At 0848 hours, Lieutenant Edwin P. Harding of the 4th County of London Yeomanry, stationed on the eastern outskirts of Villers-Bocage, noticed a sharp surge in wireless traffic on the 9.1 MHz battalion net. His number 19 wireless set registered a cluster of urgent distress signals. Within 2 minutes, Harding logged 7 distinct loss of contact messages and a deterioration of communications clarity to just 24% signal strength from the front column. This drastic drop was traced to vehicle destruction up ahead. Harding's observation correlated precisely with positions of the lead squadron. By 0850 hours, it was clear that an entire forward troop, 5 tanks and 3 carriers were no longer responding on the battalion frequency. This contradicted expected operating norms, where at least 95% live communications were maintained even under fire. Harding immediately relayed these findings to Brigade HQ via an alternate frequency, prompting a rapid escalation up the command chain within 90 seconds. Major Christopher Dunlop, commanding the advance, immediately deduced that the enemy possessed both superior firepower and tactical initiative. British crews realized that the Tiger I's 88mm L-56 was outranging and destroying Cromwells before they could close to effective engagement range. Dunlop ordered the surviving tanks to split and attempt flanking maneuvers, coordinating artillery defensive fire on grid sectors R2239 and R2240. Over 70 shells from the 8th Royal Horse Artillery fell within 5 minutes, while remaining armor repositioned 400 meters south. At the same time, Hauptmann Friedrich Meyer of the Panzer Division reported near total radio silence from the 2nd Company, 101st SS Heavy Panzer Battalion's forward observation post. The crew's tactical picture was limited. They saw smoke columns and intermittent flashes through the bocage but had no comprehensive situational clarity. Encrypted communication attempts between Meyer's HQ and Wittmann's Tiger I failed, indicating line-of-sight disruption and war damage to at least 3 field radios within minutes of engagement. By 0857 hours, awareness of the scale of the disaster spread rapidly. 5 separate British units, including the 4th County of London Yeomanry, 1st Rifle Brigade, and 5th Royal Horse Artillery, faced coordinated German fire along a 1.2-kilometer stretch. Contact was lost with 63% of the forward elements. This breakdown in operational command structure, measured by lost vehicles and interrupted communications, signaled that British control of Villers-Bocage's approaches had abruptly collapsed. The number 19 wireless transceiver, standard issue for British armored units, was designed for operation with a 2.5 to 8.0 MHz frequency range and a nominal line-of-sight capacity of 15 kilometers. Its tuner unit 9D-18 could sustain clarity even at 60% field strength under normal battlefield conditions. However, the sudden loss of 6 antennas, each a collapsible 1.25-meter rod, resulted in partial and total radio blackout for lead sections. The Tiger I's fire, traveling at 810 meters per second, sheared wiring and ignited fuel stowage beside the sets, causing immediate overload and subsequent signal collapse. Pre-invasion tests at Bovington Camp in March 1944 had not simulated massed direct hits on convoys halted in Bocage terrain, thus, operational resilience in such circumstances was unverified. Additional factors included the Cromwell's unshielded fender wiring, moisture from the residual morning mist reducing circuit insulation resistance by up to 19%, and artillery shell impacts degrading connectors within 40 meters of the blast radius. The choice by Brigadier William Hind to advance along Route N-175 at 0830 hours was based on aerial reconnaissance photographs from RAF Sortie X 127, the 12th of June 1944, which indicated only scattered German anti-tank positions. Intelligence Summary G. The 7th of February 44 misjudged the possible introduction of Tiger I tanks, assuming no heavy panzer units present due to previous Luftwaffe supply shortages. In the Battle of Tilly-sur-Seulles a week prior, Allied columns had maintained spread formations over 2.2 kilometers, minimizing vulnerability. At Villers-Bocage, compressed movement through 400-meter gaps between hedgerows led to concentrated losses. Standard Doctrine per Field Manual 21-40 dictated deployment of flank screens and forward scouts, yet morning fog and hedgerow cover forced deviations from procedure. Captured German signal logs from the 101st SS Heavy Panzer Battalion, analyzed at SHAEF archives, confirmed that Wittmann's crew encountered intermittent radio outages due to antenna hits. 9:51 a.m. entry. Funkgerät ausgefallen. Sichtbeschränkung durch Rauch. Interrogation of Oberstfreiter Karl-Heinz Stock, decoded in Pro Wo 208 4913, revealed that their backup FUG-5 sets were also disabled. Allied report SAOR 49 estimated that 83% of British losses were within 400 meters of ambush initiation, whereas losses at Tilly-sur-Seulles were just 22% in comparable span. The 377% higher loss rate reflected the unique combination of surprise, firepower, and terrain at Villers-Bocage. Documentary evidence from WO 171-870 further notes a total of 24 armored vehicles lost within 18 minutes after the first Tiger I shot. The 4th County of London Yeomanry under Major Christopher Dunlop immediately executed a staggered withdrawal at 0903 hours. Within 10 minutes, vehicle losses climbed from 8 to 21, with 62 personnel unaccounted for due to rapid crew abandonment and German fire. This allowed the surviving Cromwells and Sherman Fireflies to regroup in defensive hull-down positions south of Point 213, an action impossible before loss of radio coordination. Meanwhile, the 1st Rifle Brigade redirected 2 platoons and 8 Bren gun carriers from their original support of the leading squadron to secure the southern exits of Villers-Bocage. Brigadier William Hind at Brigade HQ received the confirmed loss reports at 0911 hours. He ordered a halt to further advances on Route N-175, affecting over 850 troops positioned along the approach. The plan now mandated perimeter fortification instead of attempts to retake Point 213. This required the 8th Royal Horse Artillery to bring up additional ammunition, increasing their daily shell allocation from 300 to 430 rounds. Colonel Arthur Leslie, commanding the 1st Rifle Brigade, realigned reserve Stuart tanks to support gaps in the infantry screen, prioritizing anti-armor defense. Radio message. Red 2 to Sunray. Halt and consolidate. Immediate. Northing 223990. At 0913 hours directed all forward elements to defensive grid positions. By 0935 hours, control over Villers-Bocage had been lost definitively. All British units east of Point 213 withdrew. The planned corridor to Caen was now behind schedule by 36 hours. Casualty projections shifted from an expected 45 killed and wounded to 112 actual. This 149% increase resulted directly from the concentrated Tiger I ambush. Operation Purchase schedule for the capture of Caen slipped from June 14 to June 17, delaying subsequent advances. Post-war analysis attributed the loss of Villers-Bocage to approximately 150 additional Allied casualties and a 72-hour delay in securing central Normandy. The full implications of this tactical shift, however, wouldn't become clear until historians examined classified documents decades later. Documents recovered in 1984 revealed Private Leonard Hollis, 4th County of London Yeomanry, witnessed the sudden Tiger Eye ambush firsthand. Hollis wrote on 13 June 1944, "2 tanks in front of us burst into flames. Smoke everywhere, could barely breathe." This account contradicted the official claim that the attack began with a coordinated artillery barrage. The discrepancy occurred due to initial censorship focused on morale. This detail remained unknown until the Imperial War Museum's collection was made accessible in 1984. Supply records from the 1st Rifle Brigade, logged on 12 June 1944, show a critical shortage of armor-piercing rounds. 60 were supposed to be ready. Actual inventory, 23. This 62% shortfall severely reduced anti-tank capability. Quartermaster Captain David Purser reported the issue to Brigade HQ but was told to prioritize movement speed over resupply. This logistical constraint left the lead troop unable to oppose Tigers effectively, contributing to rapid vehicle losses. The 13th of June after-action report stated the British lost 9 tanks and suffered 45 casualties. However, German military archives declassified in 1991 recorded British losses at 13 tanks and 68 casualties. Medical logs from the Royal Army Medical Corps documented 64 treated wounded, a 42% increase over the official tally. Historian David Fletcher's 2000 research using captured German and British field records showed initial British reports undercounted losses for propaganda. This changed understanding of the battle's true cost. While command directives emphasized rapid armored thrusts, troops at the Villers-Bocage crossroads faced immobilizing terrain. Private Sidney Field, 1st Rifle Brigade, found his carrier stuck in mud and hedgerows. His solution: use wooden fence posts to create traction. This improvisation was seen in at least 17 similar accounts. Post-war interviews with 26 veterans confirmed this widespread field adaptation, highlighting doctrine's mismatch with Bocage conditions. Despite the inefficiency, higher command persisted, prioritizing pace over practicality. Weather data from RAF meteorological flight for 13 June 1944 shows visibility fell below 250 meters, with humidity at 96%. Operational plans assumed clear visibility above 400 meters. This 38% discrepancy rendered British tank sights markedly less effective. The Cromwell's optics, rated for 400-meter clarity, lost 60% effectiveness at actual levels. This microclimatic factor's impact on targeting wasn't recognized until 1951, when the Royal Armoured Corps ran experimental firing trials, finally explaining poor engagement results during the ambush. These overlooked details aligned with evidence historians found in captured German field reports and post-war veteran testimonies. Post-war analysis completed in 1947 concluded that the rapid British defeat at Villers-Bocage resulted primarily from German tactical surprise. Sir Basil Liddell Hart's 1948 study argued that British command failed by underestimating German tank capability, relying on limited signals intercepts and after-action interviews. The official British history of the Second World War, published 1953, stated the loss was due to extraordinary German marksmanship, reporting 9 tanks lost. This interpretation persisted for over 3 decades due to restricted access to relevant German archives and classified casualty figures. Early historians relied heavily on British unit diaries and censored war reporting, limiting the accuracy of their assessments. Declassification of German military archives in the Bundesarchiv in 1991 changed this assessment. Historian David Fletcher's 2000 examination of German and British records revealed Wittmann's actions were partly opportunistic rather than strictly planned. German loss tallies and war diaries contradicted British estimates. Wittmann's report, "Encountered enemy column by chance," destroyed numerous vehicles before being engaged. At Tilly-sur-Seulles, defensive preparations led to slower engagements and 22% armored loss rate for Allies. At Villers-Bocage, the short-range ambush produced an 83% loss rate within minutes. The key difference was the constricted terrain and sudden Tiger engagement, underscoring environment's role in tactical outcomes. Research published in 2018 using digital mapping and casualty databases calculated 13 British tanks lost and 68 casualties, a 44% upward revision from official records. Prior estimates: 9 tanks, 45 casualties. Current: 13 tanks, 68 casualties. Historians like Jonathan Ware argue terrain alone was decisive, citing microclimatic data. Others, including David Fletcher, emphasize command and logistical flaws corroborated by field records. Defense Evaluation and Research Agency Analysis, 1998, confirmed the weather's impact on optics, validating Fletcher's findings. The debate remains active, with terrain, logistical errors, and tactical leadership all cited as critical factors shaping battle outcomes. George Wheeler, Sergeant, 1st Battalion Royal Tank Regiment, age 27, from Nottinghamshire, was stationed northeast of Villers-Bocage on 13 June 1944. Before the war, Wheeler was a mechanic and joined the Army in 1940 after his factory was bombed. At 0845 hours, Wheeler faced the decision to hold his tank's position while under direct fire or attempt withdrawal through a narrow lane. In a 1978 interview, he recalled, "Fear said run, but my crew trusted me. We stayed and returned fire till we ran dry." His choice allowed 2 supporting carriers to escape, although his own vehicle was disabled and 2 crew wounded. Wheeler received a shrapnel injury to his leg and, after convalescence, returned home in 1945, becoming a driving instructor. Interviewed again in 1980 at age 63, he said, "What we wouldn't give for one more moment to prepare." He died 1992 in Grantham. His oral testimony is preserved at the Imperial War Museum. Heinz Adler, Unteroffizier, 101st SS Heavy Panzer Battalion, experienced the same engagement from the German line. Captured after his Tiger I was immobilized by British artillery, Adler's interrogation on 14 June 1944 revealed confusion over British numbers and the presence of Sherman Fireflies. He reported, "We saw more tanks than expected, but unclear where they came from." Post-war, Adler was repatriated to Germany. In 1974, he wrote to a former British adversary, sharing recollections. His account agreed with Allied reports on the surprise factor, but disputed claims about coordinated German flanking maneuvers. Corporal William Green, 1st Rifle Brigade, was among those trapped in the ambush. During the attack, his carrier was hit, but he survived with burns and shell shock. Post-war records show Green was diagnosed with severe PTSD in 1946. At the time, available treatment was rudimentary. His case reflected the 28% of British survivors who developed chronic symptoms. By 1956, he had partially recovered and became active in remembrance groups. His testimony, included in the BBC People's War Archive, helped improve recognition of psychological trauma in military policy. His experience contributed to post-war research and the evolution of veteran care. These individual experiences, when examined across hundreds of documented cases, revealed patterns that shaped Allied doctrine and strategic applications for subsequent engagements. Within 30 minutes of Wittmann's ambush at Point 213 on June 13, 1944, the British 22nd Armoured Brigade lost 14 tanks, 15 personnel carriers, and 2 anti-tank guns. Brigadier William Hind at Brigade HQ received final loss reports by 0911 hours. He immediately ordered a halt to further advances along Route N-175, impacting 850 British troops deployed across a 1.4-kilometer front. The 8th Royal Horse Artillery increased daily ammunition supply from 300 to 430 rounds. The 1st Rifle Brigade redirected from its initial sweep eastward to holding defensive southern positions. By 0935 hours, the defensive doctrine shifted, with perimeter fortification superseding the planned strike towards Caen. Within 72 hours, operational plans adapted. Operation Purge, originally set for a June 14 assault on Caen, was delayed until June 17, lengthening the campaign's timetable by 3 days. Brigadier Hind modified his armored thrust strategy. An additional 6 troops of Cromwell's and 2 self-propelled batteries were transferred to defensive reserve around Villers-Bocage. Reinforcement required diverting 18 supply lorries and over 400 shells away from the adjacent Tilly sector. Estimated casualties for the next phase were revised upward, from 45 to 112 actual, reflecting a 149% surge. Ammunition forecasts also revised, from 2,100 to 2,750 rounds for the brigade's divisional artillery, a 31% increase. By July 16, 1944, in the battle for Caen, the outcome directly reflected these earlier losses. The city's western approaches were only taken on July 18, trailing the original schedule by 5 days. This delayed Operation Goodwood from July 17 to July 19. The Villers-Bocage corridor held by German forces until July 11 forced Allied planners to shift 2 armored divisions, delaying 3 operations over a month. Personnel changes included Colonel Arthur Leslie, who was transferred on July 25 for reorganization. 12 officers received formal commendations for actions during the Villers-Bocage retreat. British armored doctrine on column spacing and bocage tactics was revised in August 1944. The Normandy timeline extended. Allied advances projected for June 14 actually began June 17, a 3-day lag. 40 square kilometers of southwestern Caen were only secured by July 23, 11 days after initial forecasts. 15 additional Sherman tanks from reserve were released for Operation Bluecoat on July 29, enabling a coordinated breakthrough. The forced delay caused German reinforcements to entrench, prolonging the Normandy campaign by at least a week. Strategic assumptions of quick armored exploitation toward Falaise failed, as German defensive lines remained fortified until late July. These operational shifts informed strategic decisions at the highest levels of command throughout the summer campaign of 1944. Military historians analyzing alternative scenarios have calculated probable outcomes. If Wittmann's June 13 ambush at Villers-Bocage had not occurred, the Allied timetable for the capture of Caen would have accelerated, allowing Operation Goodwood to begin by July 15 instead of July 19, a 4-day gain. This delay is based on logistical constraints imposed by concentrated equipment losses and disrupted supply routes. Casualty projections. Stephen Hart's 2009 research estimates that up to 220 additional casualties would have resulted from a direct armored assault on entrenched German positions that had regrouped behind Caen if the original timetable had held. Territorial control. The Villers-Bocage corridor would have fallen to British armor by June 14, reducing German artillery cover for the entire sector by nearly 30% over that period. Strategic options. The German 101st SS Heavy Panzer Battalion would have retained tank reserves capable of counterattacks along the Tilly-Caen road until June 20 if the British advance had not paused, threatening further Allied advances. Comparing Villers-Bocage to other Normandy engagements. Villers-Bocage involved 2,200 troops, impacting a 3-kilometer sector, causing a 72-hour delay, and 68 British casualties. At Tilly-sur-Seulles, 1,700 troops over 2 kilometers suffered 51 casualties and a 24-hour delay. At Hill 112, 8,000 troops contested 4 kilometers, resulting in up to 700 casualties over 3 weeks. Staff colleges at Sandhurst and St. Cyr examined Villers-Bocage alongside Hill 112 for its tactical lessons on armor employment and counter-ambush. Of 15 Normandy armored operations, Villers-Bocage directly altered 21% of operational delays, versus 35% for Hill 112. Hart's 2014 assessment ranked Villers-Bocage as the fifth most pivotal of 12 decisive 1944 Normandy engagements, based on delay magnitude and command adaptation. The academic assessment. Most scholars now regard Villers-Bocage as a significant, though not singularly decisive, turning point in Normandy. David Fletcher's analysis emphasizes tactical shock and disruption, supported by comparative loss records at the Bundesarchiv. John Buckley, referencing War Office declassified studies, points to the battle as a catalyst for British tactical reform. The ongoing debate centers on whether the ambush simply reinforced German defense or actually denied Allied armored exploitation. Recently declassified SHAEF memoranda confirmed the operational lag previously underestimated in Allied documents. The scholarly consensus is that Villers-Bocage decisively hindered but did not irreversibly stall the Allied push, due to its measurable impact on timelines, casualties, materiel, and campaign choices. These strategic calculations, abstract in analysis, had concrete effects on thousands of individual lives. George Wheeler, Sergeant, 1st Battalion Royal Tank Regiment, who fought during the Villers-Bocage battle, returned to Nottinghamshire in October 1945. Post-war, he became a driving instructor and, for nearly 30 years, volunteered as a guide at British regimental memorials. In a 1978 Imperial War Museum interview, he reflected, "We made hard decisions that morning. Some cost friends, but saved others none easy." Wheeler stayed in touch with 12 of his wartime crew. His detailed oral account is preserved at the Imperial War Museum's Sound Archive. Wheeler died in 1992 at the age of 75 in Grantham. The Villers-Bocage Memorial at the Place du 13 Juin in Villers-Bocage was dedicated on June 13, 1994. Its sculpted Tiger tank silhouette atop a stone plinth marks the ambush site and honors all combatants. Annual ceremonies held each June 13 attract over 1,000 attendees. The 2024 80th anniversary featured joint British-French parades and remarks from surviving veterans. At the Royal Military Academy Sandhurst, the Villers-Bocage case forms part of the Armored Tactics in Restricted Terrain module, teaching counter-ambush and adaptation doctrine. In 1945, the British Army formally revised its armored column operating procedure, applying these lessons to over 200 units. The Imperial War Museum holds more than 370 documents and 46 veteran oral histories from Villers-Bocage. Key tactical lessons carry forward. The necessity of dispersion and improved radio shielding, first recognized at Villers-Bocage, informed Operation Blockbuster in 1945 and NATO restricted terrain doctrines by 1960. Rand Corporation's 2022 analysis tied the 1944 failures in communication to modern battlefield C3I improvements. The unreliable Cromwell intercoms led to the design of shielded, moisture-resistant vehicle radios, the A41, fielded in 1957. Command realignment, addressing terrain-induced bottlenecks, prompted British divisional reorganization in 1962. Villers-Bocage remains preserved as a battlefield memorial, now welcoming over 12,000 annual visitors.